What was the methodology for implanting the false memories? This is so cool, by the way. Human memory is so fascinating. And the fact that we can engineer memory,
It's good
so
and it's
interesting. It's also really interesting that we live so much of our lives in memories.
bad.
And that you can mess with that. You can shape it. It's interesting.
It's mostly, I think, a good thing that we can shape it.
I think so.
I think the fact that memory can be false in the way that I do it in my study it's a result of the fact that our minds are made to creatively recombine information to solve problems in the present. And so even the fact that we have this gist memory, it's because we're optimizing data processing. We're basically saying these are the most important things from these events. And the other details are irrelevant. Don't remember that. Gone. And now I'm going to work with that to try and solve what life comes up with. And the ability to be creative and intelligent relies on our ability to take memories from the past and pieces of them and to creatively recombine them. And so that's what false memories are, except that then can look bad if you're trying to remember something specific. And so in my research, I used leading and suggestive questions like close your eyes, picture the event that I'm trying to implant. So I was implanting, for example, you're 14 years old, you were in contact with the police called your parents, and you assaulted someone with a weapon. And then the question is, what do you remember? And you say to me as a participant, because you've been selected out to specifically never having had this experience. And just to be clear, a weapon, I don't mean a semi-automatic weapon. I mean anything. And usually it was a rock. And so people would say I found, because a weapon is just anything you use to hurt another person. And I did the study in Canada. We don't have guns in the same way as in some other parts of the world. And so it was unlikely that my participants would have been like, yeah, I totally have all these guns. And so they would take something, an object, and hurt somebody else, or they stole something, or they hit somebody. So those are three of the conditions. And I randomly assigned people to them. And they knew that I'd contacted their loved ones ahead of time. So they were participating in a childhood memory study, an emotional childhood memory study. And they knew that. And then I'd contacted their parents ahead of time to get information about what they were like as teenagers, where they lived, friends, basic things, and to make sure they hadn't ever experienced any of the target events. Mm-hmm. And then with that information, I said to the participants, okay, so there's these two things your parents reported happening, and one of them is a true one. And so I'd always include a true one to build rapport, which is, I'm doing the what not to do of interviewing, right?
Right.
I'm laying it on thick.
To see what's possible.
To see what's possible, because you have to push it to also show that that I can do this in this context so that we can warn police to not do this. So I said, we had these two incidents that your parents reported, and one of them was you had a skiing accident and blah, blah, blah. Let's start with that one. The second one was an incident where you were in contact with the police, but we'll get to that. So we'd first have 20 minutes talking about the true memory, which people, they're getting going. It feels good. I've got a structured interview as well, which I'll then mirror in the false memory. So it all feels very legit. And then we get to the second memory, and I say this, there's this other important memory that your parents recalled. And then they'd say, I don't remember that. And I'd say, oh, okay, but I have this really detailed account. All you have to do is remember it. And then I would do the illusion of transparency, which is a really powerful psychological tool, which is to make people feel like they know what's going on when they don't really. And the thing I would do is just say, well, if you want to, we can do this memory retrieval technique called this imagination exercise. And I don't like to call it repression, but sometimes we hide away memories that we don't like about ourselves. And I'm using words that people know and mechanisms that people have heard of that are, frankly, quite disputed in actual science. But people go, oh, well, maybe I did repress this. And then everybody says yes. Like, technically, they could say no. They could say, no, I don't want to do that. But they go, yeah, of course I want to know. And so I do this imagination exercise where people close their eyes, very simple, and just imagine what could have happened, basically. And every time they say a detail, my very first detail ever, I remember this because I was so excited because they've got their eyes closed, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm right next to the head of department because they were worried, because I was a PhD student, that, the ethics of it, the consequences, it took years to get the protocol through ethics and to make sure it was safe. Anyway, I'm grinning as the person with their eyes closed says the most trivial detail. I remember a blue sky. Mm-hmm. And I remember going, it's working.
Did you know what's going to happen at all?
Oh, no, I had no idea.
That's so fascinating.
And so from the trivial details, and I'd always say, "Yeah, good job, good job."
Mhm.
Social reinforcement, little treat. And they would remember more and more details, and then they get more specific, and then they tell me who it was they allegedly attacked or stole from, where they were, and those details had to come from them because I don't know enough about their lives, right? So this is the other thing with false memories, is it's basing it on lots of real pieces of memories, real places, real people, real feelings. They're just woven together in a way that never happened. And so just 3 interviews, and you've got 70% of people confessing to a crime that never happened.
First of all, great study. Great job all around. To what degree has this been sort of elaborated on and proven further since? This is a super powerful idea, whether it's 70% or any kind of percent.
What I wanted with the study is just to show it's possible.
That's really the powerful thing, that it's possible.
Right. And so it could have been 2 people, and I would have been happy. The fact that it was so possible was, frankly, quite surprising to everybody. And we did, in fact, cut the study short because we told ethics that we're only going to have like a 13% hit rate. We're like, "Oh, this is working really well. We're going to stop."
Yeah.
And that was just because of how power calculations, whatever, science, because science.
So,
And since then, there have been other studies on implanting false memories. There have been ones also using AI tools. So, like whether or not we remember or think we remember incidents differently or better if they were created with AI images of ourselves or videos. So, there was a study that came out, I think it was this year, by a team including Elizabeth Loftus, which showed that if you turn photos of yourself into videos using AI, that you are more likely to believe that those things happened in the way that AI is telling you that they did, even though AI has absolutely no idea. And that then you are more likely to remember it with high confidence that it happened in the way that this AI has created it. And so we can see that there's lots of versions of this, whether it's in interpersonal social interactions or interactions with tech. And there's a big replication that's happening right now at the University of Maastricht of my study. Or is about to happen, hopefully, actually, is where we're at.
there's a lot of questions I want to ask here. Like, one of them, doesn't this mean that at scale you can have something like a government use propaganda to mass gaslight a population? So implant false memories, using AI, using whatever tools they have.
Yes, that is definitely already happening.
That's terrifying. Is there anything you've learned about defending against that?
Yeah.
I guess knowing that first step is just knowing that it's possible. That's already a very powerful piece of knowledge.
That's right. So the first thing that's important is for people to understand that they are capable of creating these false memories and that they're not this really unusual, hard to generate thing, that they're actually a normal memory process. And that insight is why I wrote The Memory Illusion, is because I think people need to just understand that their minds work like this and that they're really glitchy when it comes to the accuracy of their autobiographical memories. But again, that's probably ultimately a good thing as well in terms of our overall human experience. But then what happens if you do have an important piece of information that's important to not being distorted, right? You are a witness of a crime, for example, and you now know that this is going to be important. What do you do? And the really simple answer is don't trust your brain. Just make sure you write it down. Assume you are going to forget everything. Assume you're going to forget no matter how important, how emotional, how intense, how much you say to yourself. This is a failure of prospective memory, it's called. I will remember. You won't. Just assume that you're not going to remember. And the closer you get to the time at which an event happened, and we call this contemporaneous evidence, the closer you get in time, the more high quality that memory is going to be. And I think there's this myth sometimes that, like, if you're drunk or if you're high or if you're really emotional, that's somehow you should wait. You should sort of like go home, sleep it off, and then recall your memory. That is not what the current advice in memory research actually says. It's in the moment, as soon as possible, write it down, record it outside your brain. You can do it again when you wake up, but then at least you have an original version.